Welcome to Miss Scarlett. Subscribe and don't miss out on Patreon. Have fun! The ornate mirror reflected a scene that defied belief. Where moments ago stood Carson, an awkward teenager on the cusp of adulthood, now stood a vision of feminine grace and beauty. The transformation had been as sudden as it was unexpected, leaving the young person reeling in shock and disbelief. What's happening to me? The voice that emerged was melodious and soft, a far cry from the deep baritone Carson had grown accustomed to over the years. Trembling fingers reached up to touch impossibly long, silky tresses that cascaded down slender shoulders. The princess dress, which had seemed so ridiculous mere moments ago, now fit like a glove. Its shimmering fabric hugged curves that hadn't existed before, accentuating a delicate waist and flowing gracefully to the floor. Carson's mind raced, unable to reconcile the image in the mirror with the sense of self that had been so firmly established for 18 years. "This can't be real," the newly transformed figure whispered, watching full lips move in perfect synchronization with the unfamiliar voice. "I'm dreaming. I have to be dreaming." But no amount of pinching or eye rubbing could dispel the reality of the situation. The mirror told no lies, and the physical sensations were undeniable. Carson felt lighter, smaller, more delicate. Every movement brought awareness of new centers of balance, of unfamiliar weight distributions. Panic began to set in as the full implications of the transformation became apparent. How would this be explained? What would people say? And most pressingly, what would Dad think? The thought of facing his father in this state sent a jolt of fear through Carson's newly feminine form, but there was no avoiding it. Sooner or later, an explanation would be needed, and Carson had always been taught to face problems head-on. Taking a deep breath and marveling at how even that simple action felt different in this new body, Carson gathered up the voluminous skirts of the princess dress and made for the door. The walk itself was a challenge, each step a negotiation between unfamiliar leg lengths and the restricting fabric of the gown. The journey down the hallway seemed to take an eternity. Carson's heart raced, palms growing sweaty as the door to his father's study loomed ever closer. What words could possibly explain this situation? How does one even begin to broach the subject of spontaneous gender transformation? Before Carson could formulate a coherent thought, the study door swung open. Dad emerged, nose buried in a stack of papers, nearly colliding with his transformed child. "Oh, excuse me, I didn't see." The words died on his lips as he looked up, eyes widening in shock and confusion. Who are you? How did you get in here?" Carson's mouth opened and closed soundlessly, struggling to form words. "Dad, it's me. It's Carson." The papers slipped from nerveless fingers, scattering across the floor. Dad stumbled back a step, bracing himself against the doorframe. "What? That's impossible. You can't be. I know it sounds crazy," Carson said, the unfamiliar soprano of the new voice adding an extra layer of surreality to the situation. "But it's true. I tried on that old princess dress in the attic, and this happened." Dad's face cycled through a range of emotions: disbelief, confusion, fear, and finally settling into a sort of stunned acceptance. He peered closer, searching for some sign of his son in the beautiful young woman before him. "Carson, is it really you in there?" Tears welled up in Carson's eyes, spilling over onto cheeks that were suddenly softer and more rounded. "Yeah, Dad, it's me. I don't know how, but it's me." For a long moment, father and child stood frozen, the weight of the impossible situation hanging heavy between them. Then, moving with the caution of one approaching a spooked animal, Dad reached out and pulled Carson into a tight embrace.
"It's okay,"
he murmured, his voice rough with emotion. "We'll figure this out. Whatever's happened, we'll face it together." The floodgates opened then, and Carson sobbed into his father's shoulder, all the fear and confusion of the past few minutes pouring out. Dad's arms tightened, a solid anchor in a world that had suddenly turned upside down. When the tears finally subsided, Dad gently guided Carson to the living room couch. They sat in silence for a few moments, both struggling to process the bizarre turn of events.
"So,"
Dad said at last, his voice carefully controlled. "Tell me exactly what happened." Carson recounted the events leading up to the transformation, the discovery of the old dress in the attic, the impulse to try it on, and the strange, magical tightening that had precipitated the change. Dad listened intently, his brow furrowed in concentration. When Carson finished, he leaned back, running a hand through his graying hair.
"Well?"
he said. "I've heard of skeletons in the closet, but magical gender-swapping dresses in the attic? That's a new one." The attempt at humor fell flat, but Carson appreciated the effort. It was so typically Dad, trying to lighten the mood even in the face of the utterly bizarre. "What do we do now?" Carson asked, voice small and uncertain. Dad sighed heavily. "I wish I had an easy answer for you, kiddo. This isn't exactly a situation they cover in parenting books." He paused, considering. "I suppose the first step is to figure out if this is permanent." The word hung in the air between them, laden with implications. Carson hadn't even begun to consider the long-term ramifications of this change. The idea of potentially living the rest of life as a woman was overwhelming. "And if it is?" Carson whispered. "Then we adapt," Dad said firmly. "You're my child. No matter what form you take, we'll face this together, one step at a time." His unwavering support was a balm to Carson's frayed nerves. Whatever else had changed, Dad's love remained a constant. "For now," Dad continued, "I think we need to consider some practical matters. If this transformation holds, you'll need, well, a lot of things. Clothes that fit, for one." Carson glanced down at the ornate princess dress, suddenly acutely aware of how impractical it was for everyday wear. "Yeah, I guess I can't exactly go around dressed like this all the time."
"Probably not,"
Dad agreed, a hint of a smile tugging at his lips.
"And we should probably think about a name. I don't imagine you want to keep going by Carson if you're presenting as female now."
The suggestion caught Carson off guard. A new name hadn't even occurred to him. Her? Yet. But Dad was right. Carson was decidedly masculine. It would raise eyebrows if applied to the young woman she now appeared to be. I don't know," Carson admitted. "I've never really thought about girl names before." Dad's eyes softened. "Your mother and I, we had a name picked out. If you'd been born a girl, we were going to call you Emma." "Emma," Carson repeated, testing the sound of it. It felt strange on her tongue, yet somehow right, like slipping on a comfortable old sweater you'd forgotten you owned. "I like it." "Then Emma it is," Dad said, reaching out to squeeze her hand. "At least until we figure out how to reverse this, if that's what you want." Emma, and it was becoming easier to think of herself that way with each passing moment, nodded. "Thanks, Dad. For everything. I don't know what I'd do without you." "Hey, that's what I'm here for," he replied, pulling her into another hug. "Now, what do you say we raid your aunt's closet? She left some clothes here last time she visited, and they might fit you better than that dress." The next hour passed in a whirlwind of activity. Emma struggled out of the princess dress, which seemed reluctant to release its hold on her, and into a pair of jeans and a simple blouse borrowed from her aunt's forgotten wardrobe. The clothes fit well enough, though Emma was acutely aware of how differently they hung on her new frame.
Well,
Dad said, surveying the results. It's not haute couture, but it'll do for now. We'll need to go shopping soon. Get you some things of your own. The thought of shopping for women's clothing sent a jolt of anxiety through Emma. Do we have to? I mean, can't we just order stuff online? Dad's expression was sympathetic but firm. Emma, honey, if this change is going to last for any length of time, you're going to need to get comfortable navigating the world as a young woman. That includes things like clothes shopping. Deep down, Emma knew he was right, but the prospect was daunting. What if someone recognizes me? How do we explain this? She gestured vaguely at her transformed body. We'll cross that bridge when we come to it, Dad assured her. For now, let's focus on the basics. Speaking of which, have you, had to use the bathroom yet? Emma felt her face flush scarlet. No, oh God, I hadn't even thought about that. Dad cleared his throat awkwardly.
Well, when you do, just take your time, and don't be afraid to ask for help if you need it. I may not have personal experience, but I was married to your mother for 20 years. I picked up a few things.
The reminder of her mother sent a pang through Emma's heart. Mom had passed away 5 years ago, and her absence was felt keenly in moments like these. What would she have made of this bizarre situation? As if reading her thoughts, Dad said softly,
Your mom would have handled this so much better than me. She always knew the right thing to say.
You're doing fine, Dad, Emma assured him. I don't think there's really a right way to handle your son suddenly turning into your daughter. He chuckled at that.
I suppose not. Still, I can't help but feel a bit out of my depth here.
That makes two of us, Emma said wryly. They lapsed into companionable silence for a moment, each lost in their own thoughts. Then Dad clapped his hands together decisively. Right. Well, sitting here won't solve anything. Why don't we head out? Get you some essentials. We can stop by that little cafe you like for lunch. Make a day of it. Emma hesitated. The idea of going out in public, of being seen by strangers in this new form, was terrifying. But she knew Dad was right. Hiding away wouldn't make the situation any easier to deal with. Okay, she said, summoning up her courage. But can we maybe go somewhere a bit further out of town? I'm not sure I'm ready to run into anyone we know just yet. Dad nodded understandingly. Of course. We'll drive over to the next town, make a proper expedition of it. And Emma? He waited until she met his eyes. I'm proud of you. This can't be easy, but you're handling it with real grace. The praise warmed Emma's heart, bolstering her resolve. Together, they gathered their things and headed for the car. As they pulled out of the driveway, Emma caught sight of her reflection in the side mirror. The face that looked back was still startlingly unfamiliar, but she was beginning to see traces of herself in it. The same determined set of the jaw, the same spark of curiosity in the eyes. Whatever challenges lay ahead, Emma knew she wouldn't face them alone. With her father by her side, she felt ready to take on this strange new chapter of her life, one step at a time. The drive to the neighboring town passed in a blur of nervous anticipation. Emma found herself hyper-aware of every glance from passing drivers, convinced they could somehow see through the car windows and know her secret. Dad, sensing her discomfort, kept up a steady stream of conversation, reminiscing about family vacations, and sharing funny anecdotes from work. As they pulled into the parking lot of a bustling shopping center, Emma's anxiety spiked. Maybe this wasn't such a good idea, she muttered, shrinking back in her seat.
Hey,
Dad said gently, turning to face her. I know this is scary, but remember, to everyone out there,
You're just a normal young woman out shopping with her father. There's nothing to be afraid of.
Emma took a deep breath, trying to draw strength from his words.
You're right. I can do this. That's my girl,
Dad said, then paused, looking uncertain.
Is it okay if I call you that?
The question caught Emma off guard. She considered it for a moment, surprised to find that the term of endearment felt right. Yeah, she said softly. Yeah, it's okay. With that settled, they exited the car and made their way into the sprawling department store. Emma felt exposed, certain that every eye was on her. But as they moved through the aisles, she gradually realized that no one was paying her any particular attention. To the world at large, she was just another face in the crowd. The women's clothing section loomed before them, a sea of fabrics and colors that Emma found utterly bewildering. Where does one even start when building a wardrobe from scratch? Right, Dad said, clapping his hands together. Let's start with the basics. Jeans, t-shirts, that sort of thing. Then we can work our way up to the more, specialized items. Emma nodded gratefully, relieved to have some direction. They began combing through racks of clothing, Dad offering suggestions based on what he remembered of her mother's tastes, Emma tentatively exploring styles she'd never considered before. As they shopped, Emma found herself slowly relaxing. The act of choosing clothes, of considering what suited her new body and what didn't, was oddly grounding. It made the whole situation feel more real, less like a surreal dream she might wake up from at any moment. What do you think of this? She asked, holding up a soft green sweater. Dad smiled. I think it would bring out your eyes. Why don't you try it on? The fitting room presented a new challenge. Emma hesitated at the entrance, suddenly unsure. Dad? What if someone says something?
Then I'll be right here to back you up,
he assured her. But Emma, honey, you have every right to be in there. Remember, to everyone else, you're just a young woman trying on clothes. Nothing unusual about that. Bolstered by his support, Emma squared her shoulders and entered the fitting room. The next half hour was a whirlwind of zippers, buttons, and unfamiliar fastenings. Some items fit perfectly, others not at all. Through it all, Emma found herself becoming more comfortable with her new body, learning its contours and proportions. When she emerged, arms laden with a selection of clothes that fit and felt right, Dad was waiting with a proud smile. Find some good options? Emma nodded, feeling a small thrill of accomplishment. Yeah, I think so. It's kind of fun, actually. Figuring out what works.
That's great, sweetheart,
Dad said warmly.
Now, there's just one more thing we need to tackle.
He gestured towards a section of the store Emma had been studiously avoiding. Undergarments! Emma felt her face flame. Oh, right! That's important, isn't it? Dad chuckled. So I'm told. Look, I know this is awkward, but it's necessary. How about I go find a sales associate to help you out?
They'll know a lot more about this stuff than I do.
Before Emma could protest, Dad had flagged down a friendly-looking woman in a store uniform.
Excuse me, my daughter here needs some help finding the right,
foundation garments. Could you assist her? The saleswoman, her name tag read Brenda, smiled warmly. Of course! First time shopping for bras, sweetie? Emma nodded mutely, mortified but grateful for the help. Don't worry, we'll get you sorted out, Brenda assured her. Dad, why don't you go grab a coffee? This might take a little while. Dad looked relieved at the suggestion.
Sounds good to me. Emma, I'll meet you at the checkout in about an hour, okay?
As he walked away, Emma felt a momentary panic at being left alone. But Brenda's kind, matter-of-fact attitude helped ease her nerves. The older woman led her through the process of measuring and fitting, explaining the mysteries of cup sizes and band widths with patience and humor. By the time they finished, Emma had a selection of practical, comfortable undergarments that fit her new body perfectly. More importantly, she felt a newfound confidence in navigating this aspect of feminine life. "Thank you so much," she told Brenda sincerely. "I was so nervous about this, but you made it, well, not exactly easy, but definitely less scary." Brenda patted her arm. "You're very welcome, dear. We all have to start somewhere after all. You did great." As Emma made her way to the checkout, arms full of her new wardrobe, she felt a strange mix of emotions. There was still fear and uncertainty about the future, of course, but there was also a growing sense of excitement, of potential.
Thanks for watching, my girlies! Be sure to check out Patreon for more!